Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over some specific features of the MIA Japanese Support add-on and also explaining some specific design decisions that Yoga and I made when we were planning out the add-on. And most of the stuff I'm going to be talking about relates directly with pitch accent, so this video is also going to kind of include a pitch accent lesson within it. So I will also say that as a prerequisite to this video, not only do you have to already understand the at least very basics of pitch accent, but hopefully you've also already seen my previous two videos on thinking about pitch accent on the level of individual words, and then my other video about thinking about pitch accent on the level of whole sentences. So I'm going to be assuming that you've seen those videos. They will be linked in the description if you haven't seen those yet. So basically, the first thing I want to talk about today is particles. So in Japanese, particles don't really have their own standalone pitch accent in the same way that other parts of speech do. So as you hopefully remember from my previous video, I like to sort most words in Japanese into one of 5 categories: heibon, atamadaka, nakadaka, odaka, and then kifuku. So verbs and adjectives are either heibon or kifuku. But particles can't be sorted into one of these 5 categories. They don't really have their own pitch accent. They just kind of have certain properties that determine what's going to happen to them when they attach onto other words. Now, I can't really get into the details of how that works in this video because that would make this video be way too long. But basically, if you recall from my other video where I talk about thinking about pitch accent on the sentence level, right? I talked about how really when it comes to mastering pitch accent, there's 2 types of things you have to learn. First of all, the pitch accent of individual words, and second of all, the system of pitch accent rules. And under this model, what happens to particles pitch accent wise is going to belong to that second category of the system of rules. So there's a very limited number of things that can happen pitch accent wise to particles, and there's a very limited number of particles in the first place. And so, like I said in that previous video, when you go and spend a week learning all of the pitch accent rules, although in reality it's probably going to take you longer than a week, I just like to say, you know, there's a limited amount of stuff and you could technically learn it in a week if you worked really hard, but basically what's going to happen to particles belongs in there, and it's kind of beyond the scope of this add-on. And so to give you an example, if we take this sentence right here and we generate the pitch for it, we see that although kare, neko, inu, and ski are color-coded for pitch accent, wa, toka, ga, da, and yo aren't. And I should also point out here that although da isn't technically a particle, it's actually an auxiliary verb. Really, I'm kind of grouping particles and auxiliary verbs together for the sake of this point. So what would end up happening, pitch accent-wise, is that the sentence would read, kare wa neko toka inu ga suki da yo. And so again, if you learned all of the important pitch accent rules, which you can do relatively quickly, and then knew the pitch accent of kare, neko, inu, and ski, then you would know enough to know the pitch accent of this entire sentence. So that is why, again, we're not really worried about the add-on telling you the pitch accent of the particles, because not only do they not belong to one of the 5 categories, so finding a way to represent what would happen to them would be very complicated and then make the add-on more complicated, but also it's just not necessary because once you learn all the rules, you'll already know what happens to the particles. Now, the other thing I want to point out is that, you know, in general, particles kind of play the role of helping you parse Japanese sentences grammatically. So when we look at the sentence, we have this nice alteration between kind of core meaning words, like, you know, kare, neko, inu, ski, and then the particles in between. So we have this like, you know, kare wa, neko toka, inu ga, suki da yo. And this makes it very easy to parse visually because the core words are colored and the particles are not. And so we also kind of purposely wanted to aim for this effect where the words that are just playing grammar functions and helping you parse, they're not colored so that your eyes can naturally capture the color of the core words. Because again, like I explained in the previous video, the real goal of color coding for pitch accent is to help you with the job of remembering the pitch of every single individual word, not learn the rules and the systems, because you can do that on your own pretty easy. So that is that. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is that, okay, well, let me just show you an example. It will be a little bit easier said than done. So if we take this sentence right here and we generate the pitch for it, we see, この学校には女子がほとんどいない. So, この is not color-coded for pitch accent. Neither is いない. Now, these are not particles. Niwa and ga are particles, and we just covered why particles are not going to be color-coded. But この and いない are not particles. They're just normal words, and they do have normal pitch accents that could be categorized into one of the 5 groups. Kono is heiban, inai is from iru, which is heiban. But the reason why we have decided to take these out is because basically for words that are extremely common, like within the 50 most common words in Japanese, and also tend to be used right next to other words, we decided to not color code them for pitch accent, basically because we wanted to add to that effect of having as a general trend, an alteration between having something with no color and then color, no color and then color, because this makes it easier for your eyes to parse the sentence visually, and it's going to help the words that are colored leave a bigger impression on your mind so that it's easier to remember what the pitch is. And so for things like kono, it's one of the most common words in Japanese. It's not going to be hard for you to remember that it's heiban because you're going to have so many opportunities to reinforce that. Same thing with iru or inai, right? It's so common. You're going to see it like every 5 minutes when you're doing stuff in Japanese, probably like every minute. And so you're probably not going to have too much trouble remembering what the pitch accent is. And so then by having it not be colored, we can have it fade into the background a little bit and really have the core words that you're hoping the add-on will help you memorize really leave a bigger impression on your mind. So we really wanted to design the add-on so that parsing the pitch accent visually would be as simple as possible. So some other things that we took out pitch accent wise, so like kono, sono, ano, konna, sona, iru, aru, naru, those are all words that the pitch accent is not going to be colored for this effect. So the next quick thing that I wanted to talk about is basically how we have removed certain entries from the pitch accent dictionary the add-on uses in order to remove redundancies. So for example, if we were going to generate these 2 phrases, 食べるために and 学校ですから. So we can see that 食べる is one word, tame is one word, and then the particle ni. Then we have 学校 and then ですから. So originally, tame ni was listed in the pitch accent dictionary as one entry. And so it was going to be nakadaka 2. And also ですから was originally listed as one word that was tamadaka. So basically, in my opinion, tame ni is not one word that is nakadaka. What it really is simply a odaka word, tame, plus the particle ni. It's not really a more than a sum of its parts. It's literally just a sum of its parts. It's just tame, the odaka word, plus ni. If you know that tame is a noun that is odaka and you know what happens to the particle ni because you know the accent rules, you automatically know what happens to tame ni and you're going to be good. On the other hand, if you have it in the pitch accent dictionary as its own separate entry like this, then that might kind of confuse you because it doesn't really represent what's going on in reality. Like I said, the way that my brain parses this pitch accent wise is that tame is odaka and then the particle ni. Yet here we see it as nakadaka, so that's going to be confusing for your brain. It doesn't really accurately represent what's really going on. Same thing with desu kara. Really, it's just des and then kara. If you know the accent of des, and again, des is one of those words where we decided to have the pitch accent not be shown because it's so common, and that way parsing Japanese sentences is going to be easier visually. And then kara is a particle. So if you know the accent of des and you know what happens to kara, you automatically know what's going to happen to desu kara, and you don't need its own separate entry. So by having a separate entry, it almost tricks your brain into thinking that somehow desu kara is a single word, or it's more than just des plus kara, when it's really not. It's just des plus kara. So basically, we removed a bunch of redundancies that was originally inside of the pitch accent dictionary, just so that whatever is shown will represent reality as closely as possible. So in this case, you probably want to be thinking as tame ni, as tame, the odaka word plus ni, and so we made the accent dictionary reflect that. So sometimes there may be things where when you look them up within the actual dictionary, it has its own entry, but we took that out because sometimes the dictionary can be a little bit redundant, basically. So that's that. So the next thing that I want to talk about is suffixes. So basically, similar to particles, suffixes don't have their own standalone pitch accent. They can't be sorted into one of the 5 general pitch categories. So in this case, I'll go a little bit more into detail about the actual rule because suffixes are a little bit more simple than particles. So basically, there's only 2 different types of suffixes pitch accent wise. There's suffixes that override the pitch accent of the previous word and make the entire compound heiban. And then there's suffixes that override the accent of the previous word, but create a drop before the suffix. So let me give you an example. I just meant to put that here. So basically, shodo is originally a tamadaka word, but the way that the suffix ka works is that whenever it attaches onto a noun, it makes the entire compound heiban. So shodoka is going to be one heiban word. On the other hand, ken is the other type. So although gunma is normally a tamadaka when it's pronounced alone, the way that ken works is that it overrides the previous accent and makes a new drop before the suffix. So it's going to be gunma-ken with the drop after the ma before the ke. So there's only these two different types of suffixes when it comes to pitch accent. And we could have tried to come up with a way to represent this within the add-on. For example, we could have made two additional colors, one for suffixes that make the whole compound heiban, and one for suffixes that make a new drop before that suffix. But that would have complicated the add-on further, and it would have made the add-on more complicated to learn how to use. And so we decided to kind of just opt out and instead just leave them black. But this is something that we could think more about in the future and perhaps add as a kind of upgraded feature. So I guess I'm still open to thinking about how we can improve the add-on to maybe incorporate suffixes as well, but at the current moment, we're just leaving them black because they can't be sorted into one of the 5 main categories. So the next thing that I want to talk about is counters. So counters are pretty similar to suffixes as far as pitch accent goes, but before I explain it, let's just actually take an example. So here I have what should be rokkai. And when we generate it, we see that, first of all, it's not rokkai, it's just rokukai. So the furigana reading is wrong. And then the kai doesn't have any pitch accent. So basically, on the original Japanese support add-on, this same sort of mistake would occur, where when you added a counter, it wouldn't get the reading right. It wouldn't actually make it rokukai, it would just be rokukai. And the reason for this is that the way that the add-on is designed programmatically, in order to get this correct, we would have to have a comprehensive list that listed exactly what the reading of every counter was with every individual number, 1 through 10. And because this list doesn't exist, or at least, Yoga and I don't know how to access one like that, we weren't able to upgrade the feature of the add-on to be accurate when it comes to counters. So instead, it basically just shows the most likely response or the most common response, and a lot of times that will still be wrong. So again, it's rokukai, but really it should be rokkai. And for the meantime, there's no real way to get around that issue. Now, it's basically the same deal with pitch accent. So the pitch accent of counters is similar to suffixes, but it's actually quite a bit more complicated in the sense that there's only 2 different types of suffixes pitch accent-wise, but there's over 10 different types of counters pitch accent-wise. And so if you want to know what's going to happen pitch accent-wise when a certain counter attaches to a certain number, you have to know which of the over 10 different types of counters the counter is, and then what happens for that type with whatever number it's attaching onto. So in this case, the drop would be after the ka, it would be rokkai. But again, there's no straightforward or obvious way to incorporate that into the add-on at the moment. And so just like suffixes, we've decided to just leave it black instead of making it show something incorrect. So in the future, again, we can maybe try to explore upgrading this feature. But for now, it's just been left out because, again, counters can't be sorted into one of the 5 different main pitch accent categories. Okay, so for the next feature that I'm going to show, again, this one's probably going to be easier to just show rather than tell. So, for example, let's say that I have atama and I generate it. What we're going to get is this weird diamond thing right here. So basically, the deal with this is that a lot of words in Japanese have more than one possible pronunciation, more than one possible pitch accent. And so in the case of atama, it can be pronounced as odaka or as nakadaka. Now, a lot of the times when there's multiple possible pronunciations, one of them is going to be more dominant and the other one is going to be a little bit uncommon. And so in the case of atama, I normally always hear it as odaka. I don't know if I've ever actually heard it as nakadaka. But this isn't always the case where one is dominant and one is not. Sometimes they're both used equally. Like, for example, eiga, I hear pronounced as sometimes heiban, sometimes atamadaka. And other times, there might be a difference depending on where you are specifically in Japan. There might be one pronunciation that's more common than the other. Also, sometimes the pronunciation depends on the specific meaning that a word is being used. And so if a word is being used as one nuance, it has one pitch pronunciation, whereas if it's used as a different nuance, it has a different pitch pronunciation. Also, pitch accents tend to change over time, so sometimes there's a generation gap where the older generation pronounces it one way and the younger generation pronounces it a different way. And so this issue of inconsistencies in the way that words are pronounced are probably one of the most difficult aspects of pitch accent overall. But basically, when you look up words in the dictionary, a lot of times they will tell you multiple different pitch accents, and normally the more dominant one comes first. So we can see that in the NHK Accent Dictionary, the Odaka version of atama is listed first, and then the Nakadaka one. And also, if we look at Daijin, again, we have 3, which would be the Odaka one listed first, and then 2, the Nakadaka pronunciation listed second. And so the way that we've designed the add-on is that when there's multiple pronunciations, the more dominant one, or the one that's listed first, is going to be the color of the word, but then next to it, there's going to be a diamond that is colored to represent the secondary pronunciation, and when you hover over it, it's going to actually pop up with that pronunciation. And so the syntax, again, is that, you have the first dominant one, comma, and then the second one. So sometimes there might be many possible pronunciations, like let's just say, or it could be atamadaka, or it could be heiban, right? Some words you'll actually find have 4 different pronunciations listed in the dictionary. It is a little bit ridiculous. Most words, of course, have only one pronunciation. I think over 10% of words have 2, and then much fewer have 3, and almost none have 4. But basically, although it might look really weird at first that you have this diamond, once you get used to it, I have found that it's really useful because then you visually get a representation of all the possible pronunciations of the word. And because you have the actual word itself as the dominant color and then the diamond as the secondary color, once you really get used to it, it's easy to kind of naturally and effortlessly memorize both at the same time without getting it confused which one is which. And the other thing is that when you're on hover mode, so this is the hover mode field, when you hover over the word, it's only going to color the word the dominant color, and you won't really get to see the diamonds, although in the corner, you'll get to see the other possible pitch accents. So in general, I would say you don't have to try to memorize the other possible pitch accents, really just for now worry about the most dominant one, although of course the dictionary isn't perfect and sometimes it's out of date, so sometimes the one that's listed first in the dictionary won't actually be the most dominant one in reality, but that's going to be a minority of cases and you'll figure that out from your immersion. So in general, like I said, I would just stick to trying to remember the most dominant pronunciation. Don't worry about remembering the other ones, but due to the diamonds, you will passively and effortlessly end up remembering a bunch of other ones anyway, and I think that's useful and beneficial. Okay, so now on to the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video. So again, this one's probably going to be easier to just show rather than tell. So if I have this Yojijukugo here, this 4-character compound, Ishi Soden, and I generate it, it's going to give me this really weird thing where the whole word is one color and then it's highlighted in the background a different color. So basically, if we go to the dictionary and we look at Ishi Soden, we see that what this really means is that there's 2 different pronunciations. So basically this one word is broken up into 2 different pitch accent phrases. And the first half in this particular case is atamadaka, and then the second half of the word is heiban. Or if we look at Daijin and the numbers, it says 1 for atamadaka dash 0, which means the first half of the word is atamadaka, the second half is heiban. And so the way this word would end up being pronounced is ishi soden, because it's the first part's atamadaka, ishi, and then the second part is heiban, soden. Now, you got to be careful with this dash here, because if there's no dash, like in the atama, that just means that it can be 3 or 2. And the first one is the dominant pronunciation, the second one is the alternate pronunciation. Whereas if it has the dash, it means, the first half of the word is 1, and the second half of the word is 0. So basically, the way that the add-on is designed programmatically, we can easily get the information that the first half of the word is going to be one pitch accent and the second half of the word is going to be another. So in this case, we know that the first half of the word is going to be atamadaka, the second half of the word is going to be heiban. But there was no consistent way programmatically to actually know where the first half of the word ends and where the second half of the word begins. So what we decided to do in these cases where you have a word that is split up into multiple sections that have different pitch accents is to basically just draw this to your attention by making the text of the actual word the color of the first pitch accent, and then the background color the color of the second pitch accent. And this kind of just tells you as the learner to manually fix it, basically, because for now there's no obvious way to make this happen automatically. So in this case, you would just be able to tell intuitively that it's ishi as the first half of the word, and then solden as the second half. And if you weren't sure, then you can look at where the dash is in the dictionary. So we have ishi dash solden. And then if you read kanji, you know that this is normally read shi, this is normally read so, so you can kind of see where it lines up intuitively. So what you do is you would just split it up where it's split, take the first half of the word, paste it in, and then fix the pitch accent as well. So in this case, the first one is tamadaka, the second one is heibon. Make sure there's a space between the two, and then now you're going to be good to go. So that is a little bit annoying, but it's extremely rare to have words like this that have two different pitch accents, so it shouldn't be something you have to deal with often. But anyway, those are all the little things I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and see you next time, guys.